Hey everyone, my name is Julian Azan, and this is a quick presentation of the more important contributions of America's practically mythical founder, Benjamin Franklin. Now, not a lot of people know what his life was like before his actions in the Revolutionary War, so let me start with a quick recap. Dear Benny was born in Boston in the January of 1706. The 10th son out of the 17, his soap-making father wanted Ben to be a clergyman, but didn't have the moolah to send him to clergy school, so he sent Ben to work as an apprentice with his uncle James at a printer. James printed and Ben sold, and things were good, but Benny wanted to write for the paper. But at 15 years of age, no one would let him, so he became one of the first literary cross-dressers and adopted the moniker of Silence Dogood. Silence Dogood sent letters to the print, and she became a huge hit with the locals. After a bunch of letters, Ben revealed that he was in fact the do-good, much to the amusement of his Uncle James's friends and the annoyance of James himself. Not much later, Boston was having some smallpox problems and trying to figure out what to do, when the Puritan preacher family, the Mathers, went, "Hey, you know what'll stop smallpox? More smallpox. Let's give everyone smallpox." The Franklin family went, "You crazy Mathers," and debated against the idea. But Ben's Uncle James made fun of the clergy during the debate and got sent to jail for a bit, leaving Ben to run the paper by himself for several issues. When James got out of the big house, he repaid Ben with harassment and beatings, so Ben took off in 1723. 17 years old and totally broke in Philadelphia, Ben wound up as an apprentice printer, again, and did well enough to be promised his own print business by the governor. All he had to do was go to London to buy some printing stuff, but when he got to London, the governor went, JK, and Ben was stranded in England for several months, working as a printer, earning enough to get back. It was here he met Deborah Reed, who recognized him as the odd-looking broke kid in Philly she had seen a while back, and they hit off pretty good. But then Deborah said, "If you like it, then you better put a ring on it," and Ben said, "No thanks," and left for Philly while Deborah married someone else. Back in Philly, Ben worked really hard at his printing business, messed up, and did it again. This time he began making a name for himself among the people as a diligent and successful businessman. Ben had a son named William in 1728 with some unknown gal and married Deborah in 1730 after her husband GTFO'd. Together they all ran their own print shop / general store / bookstore. Alright, now that that's done, let's get to Ben's ventures and aliases. It was during this time that Ben bought the Pennsylvania Gazette and printed it himself, along with his own opinions and pieces under various aliases, like Anthony Afterwit, a humorous marriage commenter, and Alice Addertongue, a 35-year-old gossip who concerned herself with important society figures. The Gazette also housed the first political cartoon ever published in America, made by Ben himself. The Gazette would quickly become one of the most popular newspapers in the colonies. Besides the Gazette, Ben also worked on Poor Richard's Almanac under the alias of Richard Saunders. Filled with general life advice, recipes, weathers, predictions, and humorous sayings, he started it in 1732, and it had 26 editions. It's interesting to note that Benjamin, despite being what many would consider a player, considered himself with the treatment of women, adopting aliases like Polly Baker, mother of several illegitimate children, who wrote of the negative way women were seen in the eyes of the law. Not that all of his aliases were always used in the benefit of others. Celia Shortface and Martha Careful wrote mocking letters about Ben's former employer Samuel Kemmer, who had stolen many of Ben's publishing ideas. They were published by the American Weekly Mercury in the first American example of trolling. Franklin was also an active contributor to the Philadelphia community, organizing projects that improved the city streets, cleaned up the environment, and initiated multiple unions and organizations like the first American Philosophical Society, the first subscription library, Philly's first fire company, and the first insurance company called the Philadelphia Contribution, which is still in business even today. Ben was also big in invention, creating swim fins, the glass harmonica, bifocals, and the Franklin stove, a better house warmer, which he refused to patent since it had helped humanity as a whole. He also expanded on the nature of lightning and electricity. Hear that? Expanded, not discovered, with that whole kite thing. So by the early 1750s, Franklin was a popular man all over the world. So by 1757, a retired, wealthy, and popular Franklin went to England to represent colonial America for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. Had you approached him then and asked how he felt about splitting from England, he might have been offended, considering himself a loyal Englishman, even considering staying in England permanently with Deborah. It was the Stamp Act opposition that turned him, and he began seeing corruption in England's politics more clearly. So much so that during the Hutchinson Affair, in which a Massachusetts governor pretended to sympathize with the American colonists while working in secret for the king, Franklin got a hold of these letters the governors had sent to England calling for an abridgment or shortening of colonist rights, and Ben leaked them to the more outraged portions of the colonies, and was condemned by English foreign ministry for it. When Ben came back to America, he split with his son William, still a loyal Englishman, and worked actively for independence and drafted much of the Declaration of Independence with Thomas Jefferson, and left to work connections in France during the war. And it was during his late 70s that he returned to America as the president of the Executive Council of Pennsylvania, and one of the last things he ever did was write an anti-slavery treatise in 1789 before his death in April of 1790. Which brings us to an end of Franklin's more interesting life points. There is still so much more to cover in his life, but I think that's a good enough place to stop for now. Here are my sources. Just let them sink in there. Alright, you got it? Alright, and this is the end. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and thanks very much for listening.